Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Chris and I buy records. I would like to thank all of my new subscribers. I had the great fortune of being featured in one of the Reverend Rock and Rolling's Vinyl Soup episodes. And I got some subscribers, some extra views, things like that. I hope that you like what I have to say. Thank you for your comments. Really appreciated those. I will never say like, share, subscribe, anything like that. But if you want to join me on this journey, that's cool. That's cool. So I have a cold at the moment. It's not COVID. Tested this morning. Not COVID. My wife, who is currently in New Zealand, she does have COVID, but we're a little bit far away for any, contamination that way. But I have a bit of a cold, which is affecting my voice a little bit. So I thought today I would start by talking about record cleaning, because obviously there's been a lot of controversy about that. I say that it's been like a month since I have actually made a video, so this is probably old news. But I thought that I would quickly share with you my cleaning schedule and how I do it, what I use, the techniques I use, because it seems to be a bit of a hot topic at the moment, and then I'll get to the main bulk of the video. If you can hear stuff, that's my cats who are arguing. Such is life. So record cleaning. So I use steps, like most people do. So these are, step one, I will use a dry cleaning brush to wipe off any of the excess dust or dirt from the record. Step two is I'll prepare my solution, which will be distilled water, some isopropyl alcohol, and a quality surfactant. Step three is I'll prepare the area, make sure it's nice and clean. Step four, I will leave my wife who has given me quite a long time of happiness, but to be perfectly honest, she's not getting my Peter Gabriel albums any cleaner, so she goes. Step four is I will listen to a Jordan Peterson audiobook just to get me in the mood. Step five, I will get straight onto the Hoffman forums and I will destroy anyone who says that an SACD is a likely replacement for any Steely Dan album. Step five, I will actually clean the record. And what I like to do when I do this is I like to phone a friend, and I just like to talk about the first time I smoked marijuana. Now, the only caveat with that is that it has to be the same friend, and I have to tell the story in exactly the same way. After I wash the record, I then dry it using a drying rack. I like to then watch a Michael 45 RPM video and pretend that the eye contact he makes in the camera means that he's talking to me directly. That's it. That's my cleaning schedule. So follow that if you like. If you have anything similar, please let me know. So I was really planning to do the vinyl tag, which was happening in early 2023, but because I'm disorganised and busy, I totally missed that. And then I thought, well, hang on, who actually cares about any of that stuff, really? I mean, my best-selling, my favourite album of 2022, I bought 3 new releases last year. I can't remember what 2 of them are. My favourite release was Ezra Collective, and I liked it so much I can't remember the name of the album. I did like it though, it was good. So I was thinking, right, let's do some sort of vinyl tag, but I'm not going to tag it or anything like that. But I thought, what could be my spin on that will play to what I feel I do well, some feedback I've got of what I do well. So I thought, aha, let's do the Chris Buys Records 5-year incremental music from my life. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with 1986, when I was 5 years old, and we're going to talk about the music that I was digging in 5-year intervals right up to and including 2021. This might be dull, but I hope you like it. So, 1986, I was 5 years old. I didn't have a clue about music. Who does at 5? No one. Mozart wrote Twinkle Twinkle Little Star when he was 4. I'm not Mozart. And also, Mozart died when he was 32 years old. Fuck him. I've outlived him. Come on. However, I did have parents, and I did have older brothers. So there are two examples really that I can think of for things that I remember from 1985. The first one's a bit obvious and very, very contemporary. Paul Simon's Graceland. I remember going to Oswestry, which, for those that don't know, is on the Welsh border in, is it Shropshire? Something like that. It's a bit of a pig of a drive. I don't even know why we went. It was something to do with my dad's work. And I was packed into a car in the back, and we listened to Graceland and Dire Straits' Brothers in Arms, which I don't own because that's an album I can't fucking stand. Stick that in your audiophile pipe. But this is really good. This, I mean, what a thing to be introduced to when you're 5. All the world music in this. Not entirely sure why my parents had this. They're not the most, progressive people. But I suppose it wins out that melody is everything. And the songs on here are really good. Therefore, it appeals to people like my parents. So there you go. Graceland, Paul Simon, an album I still love. Also, this is the first UK pressing. This sounds really good. The second one, now this is a bit of a cheat. The Yes album by Yes. So my brother Simon, big Yes fan, even though he had a lot of the albums on vinyl with all those great Roger Dean covers and everything like that, this is the one that I really, really liked. And the one song that I really liked was Your Move, which you all know Your Move. I really, really enjoyed that. And I can remember he had this album, which I was fascinated by because of Tony Banks' Broken Foot and then The Floating Head. I don't know, I just found that really fascinating when I was 5. And the fact that he had, and I don't know what the single was, but he had a single, because I can remember the green and orange Atlantic label. And on the back of it had a live version of I've Seen All Good People, obviously, which starts with Your Move. And I remember being fascinated by the fact that it sounded very slightly different to my ears from the version on here, and the differential was that there was clapping in it. It's funny, isn't it, how you don't pick up on stuff when you're that age. So they're my two from 1986. So fast forward 5 years, 1991. Bit of a desolate time for music, in my opinion. There wasn't a great deal of stuff that interests me. There's certainly not a great deal of stuff that interests me now from that time. But I do have a couple. So my other brother, Paul, was obviously quite a big influence in my life. I'm going to show these both at once. These are quite funny. The Shaman Progen, the KLF 3am Eternal. Absolute bangers of kind of UK EDM / house. Oh, just great. I mean, yeah, these would have ripped up clubs back in the day. However, I was 10 years old, so obviously was going nowhere near the clubs. This is great, the Shaman. But also the KLF, who I don't know if they ever made it big in America. I don't know, so I don't know how well known they are. But look at Bill Drummond. He is as mad as a box of frogs. Very clever man. And just a fascinating figure in music. So that's all. Also, it's worth noting that these are both maxi singles, 12-inch singles. Albums weren't on my radar in 1991 whatsoever. Very, very governed by what was on the radio, what was on Top of the Pops, what my brother liked. And he was massively into singles. I don't really remember him having albums. But yeah, 2 British dance records from 1991. Now, 1996... this is where it starts getting into sort of my proper musical taste. So to very quickly go into it. What's the Story? Morning Glory by Oasis. My parents are going through a divorce. My dad decided that music was a good outlet for me. So went to Our Price in Rugby and he bought me this. And this album single-handedly changed my life. It made me realise that there was music out there that wasn't... It was music that belonged to me. It wasn't something that my parents liked, or it wasn't something that my brother liked. It was something that I liked. This is the only Oasis album I own. It's not a great album, if I'm totally honest, by kind of how I judge albums now. You know, it has its problems, but I can remember listening to this on the Alba CD player that we had in 1990, sort of 1995, 96, whatever it was, and this just... Hey Now is the track. Hey Now track 5 on the CD, track 2 of the B-side of this. Just, what a feeling. Your first rock and roll you never ever forget. Your first music you never forget. Yeah, fantastic. Right, May the 29th, 1996, I believe, was a Sunday. I believe. This is a dodgy story, sort of. My history teacher, Mrs. Matthews. Now that was a teacher that everybody fancied, and I mean everybody. She was good. My friend had lent her. She was my history teacher. She had lent her his copy of the Blues Brothers, of all things, on video. And we'd gone round to her house. She used to live down the road from us, which was also down the road from school. We'd pop round. She said, "I'll pop round and pick the video up." We pop round, opened the door, massive blast of music coming from her house, and she was a little bit of a kind of, she was into the sort of music that we were. She was kind of cool. She went in, got the Blues Brothers, brought it out. We asked her what was playing. She said, "Oh, it's the new Manic Street Preachers album." "Oh, I'll tell you what, they're playing at the Wolverhampton Civic on Sunday. If you can get tickets, you're welcome to come with us, me and my husband, and go." So that's what we did. The next day, bought this on tape from Gatwick Airport. I went to, I believe it was Minorca, possibly Ibiza, one of the two, with my parents. So yeah, listen to this. This just absolutely blew me away. Manic Street Preachers, they just had this kind of this energy and this anger, which really summed up how teenage me felt. And actually, I think that's common with all Manics fans. You have to get into the Manics when you're relatively young, and they will. And I think they've got a very narrow appeal in that you love the albums that you fall in love with and don't go beyond that. I have not heard a Manic Street Preachers album after 2001's Know Your Enemy. I'm not massively interested, but the first 6 albums I'm still very fond of. This is actually an original 1996 press as well. Sounds fucking terrible because it's a 1996 vinyl, but something I dearly, dearly love. Right, so fast forward to 2001. 2001, I was in a bit of a crossroads in my life. It was before I'd met my wife. I'd kind of flunked out of college at this point. I wasn't really sure. I was a bit directionless, a bit scared of going into work, spending a lot of time hanging around with friends. But, you know, I wasn't immune from the fashions of music at that point. This was the big album of 2001, obviously. So this is The Strokes, is this it? Was this a reinvention of rock and roll like Q Magazine and The Enemy made out? Probably not. But is it a largely flawless pop-punk album in the style of CBGB's 1976? Absolutely. This has got some great tunes in it. Again, The Strokes, I have no interest in anything they have done beyond this album. I had their second album on CD and thought it was just a carbon copy of this, even though I did really like the I can't remember the name of the track. The track had like a time in the track. I like that one, but this is great. Hard to explain. Fuck me, that's a great tune. Yeah, so The Strokes. This is also a album that I believe is out of print, and if you go to Discogs, any pressing of this is worth a fair bit of money, which I don't really understand because it's not a great sounding record, but there you go. The second one, I had to cheat a little bit here. So this was an album I bought in 2000, but this is Lost Souls by Doves. So to fill in the gaps, I obviously got massively into indie, Britpop, all that kind of stuff when I was a teenager, which then developed into a search for heavier and heavier music. I ended up going through a now regrettable sort of metal phase when I was, 17. Now this album, which is the debut from Doves, who used to be Sub, Ain't No Dub, Ain't No Use. Was that what the song was called? I can't remember. This is the album that kind of pulled me back into more indie territory, and this is an album that I had playing in my car. Just if you knew me in around that time, this is what you heard when you got into my car. This is such an incredible album, and the follow-up, The Last Broadcast, equally worthy of your time. Again, not a huge amount of interest in the stuff that came after that, but I have such fondness of this record. So that's Doves. 2006. I often say that 2006 is probably the weakest year for music ever. I'm not sure if I quite agree with that now, but that's just a kind of throwaway statement I had. But you know what? I was still buying contemporary music at that point. That's no exception. So this, Thunder Lightning Strike by the Go Team, this was actually released before sort of late 2005, early 2006, but for some reason it kind of disappeared without a trace. So this record was reintroduced. I remember being in, it must have been Zavvi. It was where the Virgin Megastore in Milton Keynes used to be. I don't think it was Virgin Megastore in those days. I think it was when Zavvi was about. This was playing, and it was like, what is that? That just sounds like something completely alien. So I asked the person by the counter, and they said, oh, it's the Go Team. So I bought this kind of on spec, listened to this an awful lot. My wife is still a huge fan of the Go Team. We have other Go Team records up there. I find it a little bit noisy now. I'm an old man. But this has still got an excitement. I mean, Junior Kickstart, come on. Who doesn't love Junior Kickstart? And then the absolute flip side of that, I suppose, in 2006 was the year that I discovered Radio 6 music. Obviously, when you're kind of in your, what would I have been, in my mid-20s in 2006, you're not massively interested in what Radio 1 are playing. You feel too young for Radio 2. Radio 6 came along and it was like, wow, this actually has some really great stuff. The one thing that I bought from that, which I bought an anniversary version on, is this, which is The Trials of Van Occupantha by Midlake. An absolutely beautiful kind of indie folk Americana record. This is still something that I really, really enjoy. I think Midlake are a really great band. Texas-based. They sound like a forest in autumn. They're great. I really, really like them. They're also a band that lost their lead singer and carried on and are still releasing quality stuff, so, you know, give them props for that. But this has got the song Roscoe on it, which opens the albums. I'm really crap at remembering song titles, so yeah. But this is an absolutely storming album for me. 2006. So, excuse me. 2011, absolute desolate time for me buying music generally. I had no interest in music, really into video games. I had no interest in music whatsoever. It wasn't until 2013 when I started buying records that I completely fell in love with music all over again. Now, what I was buying around then, I got married in 2009, so it was around that time, I was buying all of the reissues of Beatles albums on CD. So the best representation I've got of this is Let It Be Naked and Magical Mystery Tour, two things I don't own on vinyl. At the time, I didn't really understand an awful lot about mastering, and that kind of stuff didn't really feature into any of my kind of criteria, so I just thought that these were wonderful. Absolutely love these. I do like the little packs. I think the packaging on these is quite cute. You get like a little pull out and you get a little booklet. It is quite sweet. These kind of things are things that make me miss CDs. But Let It Be Naked, which I think, I haven't heard the new remix from George Martin, but this is my preferred listening choice of Let It Be. I think this is really good. Is it a bit Paul McCartney centric? Yeah, I suppose it is, but let's be honest, Paul McCartney, John Lennon on heroin, I'd take McCartney. 2011. 2016, this is where things get interesting. This is where kind of I have been collecting records for a few years. I am developing my musical taste at a rapid thing. I'm starting to understand more about what I like. So that's important to note. So the first record I'm going to show from 2016, and there is a reason for this, and it is a record that no one will expect, is this, which is 4.5 by Stephen Wilson. Now, this is okay. It's not great. Hand Cannot Erase, on the other hand, is quite possibly my favourite like heavy rock / prog rock album. And I was really into prog rock when I first got into vinyl. It sort of ticked a lot of boxes for me. I thought it was amazing. But this was the album that I bought days before going to see Stephen Wilson live. I went to see him at the Hammersmith Apollo in January 2006. 2016. And was blown away by it. It remains probably the best live show I've ever been to. It was incredible. And this reminds me of that time. Now, Steve Wilson, in many senses, was so good that he has put me off rock music, because this kind of felt like, I mean, unconsciously albeit, but this kind of felt like a good place to stop. I don't know. There are exceptions, but Steve Wilson. Now, the most important record, well, one of the most important records that I own generally, 2016, of course, Arthur Verocai. So the story goes, I was in Spun Out Records in Northampton. This was playing in the shop. I asked what it was. I thought it was French. Asked what it was. He said, oh, it's something that's just come in. I bought it on spec, took it home, and this single-handedly changed my musical taste. It got me into all kinds of jazz. It got me into all kinds of global music. There was no going back after embracing Arthur Verocai. I can't overstate how important this album is. This is the Record Store Day 2017 half-speed master. This is the one that goes for a little bit more than it's worth probably on Discogs. However, the newer pressings of it, they use the same metalwork, so actually you're getting more or less the same thing. This is on black vinyl. It doesn't come with the art prints. I was actually considering getting the recent reissue because of the art prints, because I wanted to frame them for my wall here. But I thought it's not really worth that. This is a brilliant sounding record. It's not Rudy Van Gelder, but it wasn't recorded to be such. But I think that most people who have an interest in music have heard of this, and they will understand my reverence of it. And if you don't know, please check it out, because it's incredible, and I can't even begin to give it justice, verbally, why. Arthur Verocai, self-titled, from 1972, still in print from Mr. Bongo, well worth it. Then finally, 2021, 2 years ago. Now, I couldn't remember 2021 at all. Between 2020 and kind of now, it feels all squished together. But then I remembered something that put these two albums on my list, and I'm going to show them at the same time. The reason that these two records are on the list aren't because they had a massive impact on me, or because I think they're better than anything I got, or even that they sum up my musical taste where it stands now or in 2021. It's not. It's because of the circumstances that I bought them and I listened to them. And there's one person who will be watching this, I hope, who this will make perfect sense to them. And these are the albums. Sunflower, Surf's Up by the Beach Boys. So my good friend Chris, I was talking to him about the Beach Boys. We often talk about music. And he divulged to me that he first heard Sunflower and the Beach Boys on I can't remember if it was a double set or if he just had the CDs, and he listened to them back to back. And he joked with me, and he said, that's the way to hear them. I did some digging, and I found that both albums were available on a UK-based website for a reasonable-ish amount of money. On Analog Productions, which sound incredible. I ummed and ahed about it and decided to buy them both. Now, there was a delay in them arriving. I think that Sunflower was out of stock and had to be ordered in from the States, so there was a bit of a delay. As luck would have it, Chris was actually visiting me the day that they arrived, and we sat together and we listened to both of them as he first did when he first heard them, and it was a great experience. Him, who is kind of familiar with the albums, but me, who is being introduced to them in a way that he was. And it just reminded me that that's the attitude that we should all have with music. That music is beyond what we hear, and it's all about what we feel. So that's it. I hope that you found that relatively interesting and you made it through to the end. It'd be great. Don't worry if you didn't, even though you won't see this bit, so don't worry. So yeah, I would love to know what people think, and if people have records that they have an incremental part of their life. It's interesting that I've missed out a lot of absolutely key albums that I love. There's no jazz there as such. There's no Frank Zappa. There's no Charles Mingus. There's no Miles Davis. Simply because I've forced myself into those categories. So I hope you found that interesting. It'd be great to hear from you. I hope you have a great week. My name's Chris and I'm by Records, and I'll see you on the next one.